Each week at this time we do what we call our community moment. It's a chance for someone from the Oasis community to get up and share a kind of a brief thought for the day that is 10 minutes or less. And it can be the story of your journey to free thought, the story of some experience you've had in your life that you want to share with us. We've had amazing community moments. If you'd like to do one, please get with me. I would love to get you on the schedule. This week we have a first-time community moment presenter. Josh Spencer is going to talk to us a little bit about his time in the Peace Corps. Josh, come on up.
Good morning, everyone. So whenever I was putting together this presentation, I was just telling Mike, I said 10 minutes is absolutely impossible to capture my 3 years in South Africa. So I'm going to do the best to give you the concise version, but hopefully in the future I go and get to speak a little bit more about it. So the first thing about the Peace Corps, what I've found is that whenever I talk to older people, a lot of people say, is that still around? It very much is. When I talk to younger people, the millennials, I've gotten, what is that? So anyways, the fact of the matter is that the Peace Corps is still very much alive and well. Just a little background on it. It was founded in 1961 by JFK. It is an independent U.S. government agency. What that means is it receives its funding from the U.S. government, but the president does not have the power to fire the director, because the whole idea was it needs to remain non-political. The idea of the Peace Corps is to help out people, not to go and promote any kind of political aim or U.S. policy. The idea is that basically Americans go to a developing country as a volunteer to work for 2 years. In my case, I actually extended for a third year because I enjoyed it so much. But the idea is that when you go there, the problem that you find with a lot of things in developing countries is that people from the West, developed countries, go there and they live in these nice houses and drive around in these nice cars and stuff, and then they kind of do these parachute missions where you kind of go into the slums from time to time and you pass out some blankets and then you go back and have a nice meal back at your house. That's not what the Peace Corps is about. The Peace Corps' idea is that in order to help people, you've got to be around them all the time. And so that's the idea of the Peace Corps, is that you do receive a stipend, but it is on the level of the people that you're serving. So another thing also about the Peace Corps, as much as humanitarian as it is, if we're to be quite honest, it was also originally created because we wanted people to like us better than communists. That was the main term, but obviously we kind of away from that. But basically, Peace Corps has 3 goals. To help the people of the interested countries. Basically, and Peace Corps has to be invited. We don't force anybody in there. But if a country says we want Peace Corps, then they will get an agreement. And then basically the idea is that you use your knowledge and skills to help those people create a better life for themselves. The second one is to, in that country, go and promote a better understanding of America and Americans. And the third one is to promote a better understanding among Americans of the place that you're at. So among returned Peace Corps volunteers, we're constantly talking about third goal activities. This is a third goal activity, okay, because I'm constantly trying to go and teach people about South Africa and my experiences there. But these are basically the 3 fundamental goals that you're trying to get with Peace Corps. Okay. So I was in South Africa. And so I still stay in contact with a lot of my friends from South Africa, and after I got done in South Africa, I also went on a trip for about 2.5 months from South Africa all the way up into Rwanda. So I've been many places in Africa, and just to clear up a few things, one of the things that annoys African people the most is whenever people in the US and other places constantly refer to them as Africa, as if it's a country. Okay, Africa is not a country. I think there's something like 54 different countries in Africa. Somewhere between 2,000 to 3,000 different languages. For instance, just in Nigeria, there's over like 500 languages alone. So anyways, my point of the matter is that Africa is a very diverse place. And even though they all have a dark colored skin, that does not mean they are the same or that they necessarily like each other. Okay. Most Africans are not still living in huts. Okay. Technology has made its way over to Africa, and especially if you go to the capitals of most African cities, you will see superhighways, skyscrapers. I still communicate every day on my smartphone with my African friends on their smartphones. So this is not 1850 anymore. Africa, I think, in many places is actually much more developed than people realize. All Africans are also not tall, nor are they all marathon runners. Okay, all right. Your marathon runners are mainly confined to the Kenya and Ethiopia, and only specific tribes within those places. I was also in South Africa, and so many people, I remember from here saying, "Oh, I bet you got a lot of good basketball players down there." Not so much. Okay, South Africans actually tend to be shorter people. Okay. They're not the giants that you see sometimes coming from West Africa, things like this. And then the final thing is Africa does not need to be fixed by the outside world, and certainly not by the Western world. And this is another huge perception that really annoys me, is that there's this concept of the white savior that needs to come in and save Africa from itself. Africa definitely has its problems, but it's not going to be fixed just because some do-gooding white people come in and try to say, okay, well, here you go. So we really need to try to move away from this idea of here we are to save you. It's more, we're here to help, but ultimately you need to save yourself. Just a quick thing about South Africa, where I was. But most people are familiar with apartheid. During apartheid, everyone was classified according to 4 races. You were either white, black, colored, or Asian. Colored was their term for mixed race. There was no in between. And which race you were determined what kind of education you got, what kind of privileges you got, things like that. And this system only officially ended in 1994 when Nelson Mandela was elected president. So this is a bench from the apartheid thing. It was actually very similar to Jim Crow. I mean, you had your whites, your white areas, and your non-whites areas all over the place. So my specific experience, I worked in a black township. What they did during apartheid was they did not want anyone living next to somebody that was not like them. So even if there were black and colored people living together, they forcibly removed them to separate areas. They had a concept from the Bible, from the Tower of Babel, that if you know the story of the Tower of Babel, was that the humans were coming together, working together to build this huge tower, and God said, this is not good, we're going to separate them and get them different languages and stuff so that they don't do this. And so the government at that time took that as divine sanction, that God does not want us living together or mixing. And so they actually had a divine justification for their system as well. So they forcibly removed everyone, and even though it's 20 years later after 1994, for the most part, people are still kind of self-segregate. So I was working in the black township in a place called Warrenton in the Northern Cape, which is near Kimberley. If you've heard of the De Beers Diamond Company, Kimberley is where De Beers is headquartered. Kimberley was where one of the first major diamond discoveries in the world was made. If you've also heard of the Rhodes Scholars, Cecil John Rhodes was the person who endowed that. He made his fortune in Kimberley. I was an economics teacher, teaching 12th grade, and then what usually happens at the Peace Corps is you start off doing one thing and then it goes and expands into many other things. So I ended up starting off teaching 12th grade economics, and then I was doing a pretty good job, I think, and so I ended up going and training other economics teachers in the province. Also created a thing called the Young Entrepreneurs Society to go and kind of dovetail with my economics teachings, go and give them some practical applications. So we started a thing called a tuck shop, which is like kind of just a basic thing with candy and chips and things that we were running in the shop, because another thing you find in South Africa is that they also are constantly complaining about foreigners coming in and taking their jobs and running businesses, but ultimately a lot of times there's nothing preventing them from starting the business. It's just that the foreigners are working a little bit harder and having a little bit more initiative. And so I said, guys, we need to stop complaining and let's actually do something ourselves. So that's what we did. So when I actually looked on most of these, I realized most of my pictures are actually on another computer, and I don't have enough time to really go through them anyways. But this was one of my students. One thing you also find throughout Africa is people wearing American clothing. So you will find Dallas Cowboys and, Buffalo Bills, Super Bowl 1993. You do find this. So also in Africa, you get to eat lots of interesting things. This is a sheep's head. It's actually quite tasty. But I think at this point, I've eaten pretty much every portion of a sheep and cow. So. This is a picture from Cape Town. Cape Town, if you ever get a chance to travel, one of the most beautiful places in the world. So like I said, they do have technology, but they are a little bit behind. So that was a big thing whenever you could start paying with credit card at the gas station. And I mentioned also I did travel afterwards, so I got a chance to go and travel to many African countries, which is why I also know that not all Africans are the same. So this was a picture of me when I went to Zanzibar, which is just off the coast of Tanzania. This is me whitewater rafting on the Nile River. That's Victoria Falls in Zimbabwe. This is a local market in Tanzania. Another thing in parts of Africa, you can get the best, biggest, and freshest fruit you'll ever have in your life. This is in Malawi. This is a hitchhike that I got with an ambulance in Malawi. That is in the bush in Zimbabwe. So that's basically it for this. The one thing that I just want to mention, again, I hope to go and get a chance to speak more in depth on this topic, but one of the points of Oasis is to provide community. And I think many times when we talk about free thinkers, by definition, they're more individualistic. But that really doesn't serve us well. And one of the things that I miss the most about my time in Africa is that most African societies are very communal. They simply do not understand the idea of living apart. You don't find many suicides because there's no chance to. You're always around somebody else. And so that is, to be quite honest, one of the things that I really miss the most, because I find that most of our happiness comes from the relationships we have with others. This is something that many Africans understand, and I think that sometimes we forget here in the United States. So for that reason, I would say something like Oasis is very, very important, and I would definitely say try to go and create these relationships and these communities as much as you can if you want to increase your happiness. This is one of the things I've learned. So thank you.